Last before the break, I'm now going to introduce you to our next speaker. When Anthony and I were chatting about what we're going to call the talk, we thought that simply paying the ransom was mischievous and mysterious enough to keep people wondering. So the CEO of Defence Logic, Anthony Flemmer.
Hi. Okay. So, why do I want to talk about this? I guess last week a lot of people wanted to talk about South Africa playing against France. And now this week no one wants to talk about South Africa playing England. And I want to talk about it, but I just can't get anyone to talk to me about it. So I've got a sort of a natural attraction to talking about things that maybe certain people don't want to talk about. So that's why I also went into this. So another thing is, there just seems to be no information out there. You know, if you type into ChatGPT, I want to pay this ransom, this is what you get back. It's not very useful. So what I've actually done is I've actually spoken to a number of people and on a number who've actually paid ransoms, who haven't paid ransoms, and I've put together the experience of actually paying the ransom, and it's not quite as simple as you'd like to think it is, and it's quite nice and murky, so it makes for a nice tale. So the other thing that's also quite extraordinary about our business is, and I think Matt alluded to it as well, is you can't really put a finger on how big this problem is, and I saw some extraordinary vendor numbers right up into the, 40 billion is the size of the market. I can't believe that. Then suddenly the ransom's only 200 million. It's all over the show, and I don't think the ransoms are 200 million because there are some massive ransoms that are getting paid at the moment. But what we do know is that the size of the ransoms have increased hugely over the last couple of years. They've just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And you might look at that 30 million and say, well, that doesn't happen. That does happen. We know it happens. So we've got these missing data points because people don't want to talk about these sort of things. And I'm hoping more people will start talking about the ransoms that are getting paid, and they can talk about it in the form of stories. That's probably the best way to do it, because then you can't actually pin it on an organization. So, who's getting ransomed, and how do you easily find out who's getting ransomed? Because that was one of my things. Like, we talk about it all the time. Where's the list? Well, there's actually a very good list, and here it is. This is what I had to hand in my presentation so early to Matt because it's such a long presentation that it stopped on the sort of 17th. But you can see here's a list going back a few days, and this is a website called Ransom Look, and some very interesting things that are happening there. And this list is actually extremely accurate, because some of the ransoms that have been sort of led into, they've appeared on this list, and the dating around the list is also extremely accurate. So it's actually quite amazing how accurate it is. So how does it actually happen? How does this information get there? You know, is there some sort of like automatic linkage? So what I can piece together and talking to people is that there are actually there are journalists out there that spend their life looking at who's getting ransomed, and they spend their time on the dark web seeing the ransoms, and then they just percolate it up nicely for us to Ransom Look. So we can go and have a look at it. There's a whole amount of information there that's absolutely fascinating, and you could just do a talk on that. But have a look at that, and you'll see some of your friends and families, organizations appearing on there, no doubt. It's pretty up to date, and large organizations are getting hit. So who's actually reporting? This is also what interests me, is there's a lot of non-reporting going on to the authorities. So there's large organizations that have to report. They're governed by FTSE or NASDAQ and those sort of those governance laws. And then there are regulated companies. They've got to report if these things happen. but many, many more are keeping quiet and don't want to report and want to deal with it in-house. That's also messing with the numbers, so we actually don't know how big it is, other than knowing it is a problem that we've got to deal with. So, just a quick little question before I get into my stories. Who thinks paying a ransom to a Russian gang is legal? So if it's a Russian gang, who thinks that you can actually pay them legally? No one. There should be someone that says yes. Okay, no one. Okay, so well, we'll get into that in a bit more detail as I go through. So the first story is a law firm. It's not a Jersey law firm. It's a North American law firm. So this company, law firm, it's not really a law firm, but in my head it's a law firm, so that's how I tell the story. They are a billion dollar company with a lot of money. They deal in a lot of sensitive documents, like a law firm would, fighting cases, sharing this information around. And they don't have a SIEM. They decided that was obviously going to be a little bit too expensive, so they didn't worry about having any monitoring technology. And yeah, they got hit. They got hit with a nice big attack. And so what did they do? They looked at, we've got a $1 billion business, we've got a $10 million ransom that we've got to pay. What's it going to do to us? The value destruction, once this information gets leaked out, well, we're probably not going to have much of a business left behind. And so they did that analysis. Then it's not, you don't just go, okay, well, I feel like paying the money. It's not quite as simple as that. You've actually then got to get the Department of Justice involved in the process. You've got to liaise with them. And this is the part you guys are going to love, because I love it, is you've got to get a lawyer's opinion that says that ransom, even though it's going to a Russian, is not going to a sanctioned Russian. Now, I looked at this and go, well, how do you get there? I still don't know how you get there. But anyway, these lawyers can write you a note that the Department of Justice will accept, saying, yeah, we know it's going to a Russian gang, and we know that they're not sanctioned. I didn't think that was possible. I thought everything that went to Russia was sanctioned at the moment, but some gangs are not sanctioned. So going back to my original who's put their hands up, yeah, no one put their hands up, but you actually can pay Russian gangs, believe it or not. So then you've got to go purchase your crypto, because they don't do IOUs, and they don't do checks, and they don't do SWIFT transfers. So you go purchase your crypto, and you think, well, that's it. And just remember, every person in this process is not doing it for free, and you're doing it on the back foot, because you haven't probably got an instant response plan. These guys didn't. So you are paying through the nose for every bit of resource, every lawyer's letter, and every meeting that you're having with the Department of Justice. Then, just to add insult to injury, you've got to get a facilitator to actually pay that ransom for you, because they know how to make sure that the money goes into the right wallet, and that the ransom is paid. Okay. And the nice thing about having paid that ransom is you've got absolutely no guarantee that your data is not going to get leaked, because the ransomware gang has got your data. So you pay the ransom, and I guess the whole story's over then. No. Then the real fun starts. You start rebuilding your whole system again. Well, this is what happened in this story. And you install a SIEM this time, which is great. Would have been nice the first time, because it would have helped with the threat hunting. Then, while you're building, you're testing, because you've got to make absolutely certain that you're not baking in another ransomware attack. And this is all happening at speed, because your business can't be doing any business while this is happening, so you're getting the CEO shouting at you as the IT or the CISO person. It's very unpleasant. You're communicating to your clients, telling them that their data is now safe because you paid the ransom, telling your staff why you paid the ransom. They're not particularly happy about it because no one really wants to pay a ransom. And at the end of it, you've landed up paying a huge amount of consultancy fees, eye-watering numbers, and you've paid a ransom. So that's the story of paying the ransom. And so let's get on to, and then obviously you've got to do a forensic investigation, which is pretty difficult to do when you haven't got the logs, but you've got to do it anyway because you've got the Department of Justice involved. So then the next story is about an oil firm. This is a company that it's actually not an oil firm, but I call it an oil firm just to keep you guys off the scent. And they're a huge company. They're a huge company. They're hundreds of billion a year turnover, revenue streams, and they do have a SIEM. They've got a very good SIEM with a company with the sort of equivalent capability of Deloitte's, but probably not quite as good as Deloitte's. So what actually happened? Well, they also did the cost-benefit analysis about whether to pay this ransom. Their ransom was going to be a lot more. It was going to be sort of around between 30 and 50 million. So they needed to think about that a little bit longer than the law firm, who dived into paying the ransom quite quickly. What was different in this case is they knew the data that the ransomware gang had taken. Now, that puts you in quite a good advantage because now you can actually go through it and say, okay, 50 million, okay, this has got some private data in it. It's going to hurt. It's got some IP that's going to get leaked out. That's also not going to be great. People are going to know what deals we're doing and what prices we're doing them at. That's also not going to be great. But is the 50 million going to be worth it? And also, we don't want to pay it because we just don't want to pay the ransom. And then, so you're understanding it from from your side. You're understanding it from the public side. You know that data is going to go out. So you've got to notify your people, and there could be some horrible stuff in that data. This was highly sensitive data that was stolen, and you've got to notify the companies that are also going to be. So that you're now starting to resource up. It's not paying the ransom is not a free lunch. You still got to pay. It's still going to hurt. And then you've got to put support structures and processes around when that data gets made public and how you're actually going to deal with it. And then, well, you've already decided not to pay it, but the ransomware gangs now realize you're not going to pay it. And then they release that data, and you've then obviously got some regulatory fallout because if you're up in North America and you're listed, there's going to be all sorts of fallout. And that becomes pretty painful because your execs get sucked into a lot of discussions with regulators and lawyers instead of building their business, which is what they're wanting to do. They frankly just putting a big cost element of their time into trying to sort this out and get it dealt with. So what do these guys have to do? Okay, well they didn't have to rebuild the whole system, but they removed a section of their network and the offending bit of software that caused the problem. Client communication based on the leaked data. Obviously, you've got to get on the comms, staff comms, and there was also a large amount of consultancy spend. So it doesn't seem like you can get away from the large amount of consultancy spend. Doesn't matter whether you're paying it or not. You need people to help you because you don't know how to do this yourself. But hopefully, if you've got a nice retainer, you can with somebody who does know what's going on, that can reduce that consultancy spend. Many conversations with the regulator. This is not a once-off. We've got we had good systems in place. These guys got past us, and they go away. It's time-consuming, and when you look at the people telling you these stories, you look them in the eyes, it's extremely painful and very, very frustrating, especially when you've spent an absolute fortune on cybersecurity anyway, and then you're still getting picked up in this kind of stuff. So it's frustrating. And you can do the forensics. These guys, it wasn't really necessary. It was a well-publicized attack. Lots of people had this problem. So my summary sort of takeaways on this thing is you're going to pay the ransom if it's going to save your company. You're not going to pay it if you think you can get away with not paying it. Nobody wants to pay the ransom. But before you go judging the people that do pay the ransom, try and put yourself in their situation where you've worked for a company or you've built up a company for 20 years and now it's going to disappear down the drain. So, yeah, ransoms are definitely getting paid, and I'm surprised we don't talk about it more, because the reason why there is more and more ransom is because it's getting paid. I'm not saying it's acceptable, but that's what's happening. Once you've paid the ransom, you've still got a huge amount of effort. I don't believe it's an easy way out. It's just a case of protecting your business. You've still got a huge amount of work to do, and you've still got to jump through a lot of regulatory hoops. And then not paying it's also not that easy, because you can't just be sending your IT guy or your CISO along to talk to the regulator. They're going to want to see the CEO or the COO at least in these situations. So it's exec time that gets sucked up, and that's not good for any business. The execs need to be driving the businesses forward and growing them. Consultancy spend, which either way you are going to spend. I would say that the business that had the SEAM and the SOC, the oil company, probably had a nice retainer, so it didn't actually impact their cash flow as much as the other company, the law firm, who actually had to come up with the ransom and out of pocket fund it all. But in both cases, you would have had exec time getting sucked out of the equation. And I'd imagine, I didn't actually confirm this, but insurances would go up for both of those, because now you've lost your no claims bonus, or whatever the simple process is that insurance companies work with. So that's another cost that's going to be added to the equation. It's not a great story. I would have loved to have told you don't pay the ransom and everything's happy days, but it's not. That's not the truth. So I think enough of us know about how to in preparation for ransom attack. You've obviously got to do your incident response planning. I would do it properly. I would get somebody to help consult you on it. I would get a round table and actually push the limits on this, because if you do it properly, at least when it happens, you're going to be able to deal with it a hell of a lot better, and you're going to have processes and procedures in place. Basic stuff, we've talked about it earlier on this afternoon. You risk assess your network, look for the places where they could attack you, fix those places up, and then it's train your staff. Just make them more and more aware that this is what's happening. So, because the earlier you can get ahead of these guys, the better it's going to be. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.